What would you do if the person who was supposed to build you up spent your whole life trying to break you? In today's story, the protagonist's answer is a masterclass in how to reclaim your own power. Ever since I can remember, I have been completely and utterly under the thumb of my father, Arthur. All of us have been, me, my younger brother, my little sister, and my mother. My father is a raging asshole. A male chauvinist. Over-the-top macho type of guy. And as the eldest son, I was always the primary victim of his dislike. Because I didn't fit his image of the ideal son. Growing up, I was, for lack of a better word, a bit of a girly boy. I wanted nothing more than to dance and frolic around in dresses. I vividly remember when I was 4 or 5. My mother brought down this big box of dress-up clothes from the attic. My eyes went wide. And I immediately picked out the prettiest, frilliest golden-colored dress I could find. I pranced around the living room in it and proudly declared myself a princess. And that I was now a girl. For a few happy months. This was my secret life. But only during the day when my father was away at work. I'd watch ballet videos with my mother. A soft-spoken and open-minded woman who was a part-time social worker back then. I was happy and completely careless. My father, Arthur, was and is an authoritarian figure. He'd had himself legally emancipated at an early age just so he could join the army ahead of time. After 3 years, he left as a lower-level officer and started a career as a seaman, eventually becoming a captain by the time he met my mother and had me. He later left that life and became a traveling salesman. Think Don Draper. But a 6 feet 4 inches Western European man with curly graying hair and piercing blue eyes. I've always found him incredibly intimidating. And I think my mother did too. Anyway, the long story short, he came home early one day. He walked in and saw me in my golden dress. His face didn't change. But his voice became icy cold. Go and take that off. After you take it off, go sit on the sofa. My little hands were trembling as I fumbled with the buttons and fabric. I did as I was told. Next, he summoned my mother into the room and demanded to know what the hell she had been doing to his boy. I had never seen a person shrink so much. So quickly. My mother just seemed to fold in on herself. I felt like a tiny fly on the wall. Barely present. Just watching the scene unfold. Arthur thought he had locked away a problem. But in reality, he had just locked in a resentment that would fester for over a decade. Building towards a confrontation he could never have predicted. He marched up to the attic. Took the box of clothes. And put a heavy padlock on it. Informing us that we were not to touch it. Until my wife gives me a daughter. That box stayed there. Untouched. Until my sister was born 10 years later. After that day, my father took a much more active interest in my upbringing. He was determined to make a man out of me. He took me to see Navy ships and car races. And forced me into martial arts. In some ways, he succeeded. One strange thing he allowed, though, was for me to keep my hair long. I was bullied at school for it and sometimes wanted to cut it off. But he insisted I keep it. Face the bullies. And beat the shit out of them every time they called me a girl. 2. Show them how much of a girl I was. I did just that. It toughened me up. But it also damaged me in other ways. By the time I went to college, I had molded myself into a pretty normal dude. I wasn't gay. Or even a crossdresser. Although deep down those urges were still buried. I tried desperately to fit in and be what he wanted me to be. But I also grew more and more resentful of him. In college, I finally found a different world. I made a lot of friends, including some guys from an acting class I took. One of them was your typical flaming and fabulous type of guy. Let's call him Julian. He was as over-the-top gay as my father was over-the-top straight. One night, over drinks, I found myself telling him everything about my upbringing and my terrible father. Julian listened intently. Then a grin spread across his face. He said I should get back at him. When I asked how, he laid out a plan. Why not pretend that I was gay? But it couldn't be simple. Not just a phone call. No. This had to be a performance. For weeks, I'd hint about having met somebody and being in a relationship. I'd say her name was Julia and ask if I could bring her over for Christmas dinner, when the whole family would be there. And then I would arrive with Julian instead. It started as a simple plan for revenge. But neither of us could have known that this single act would permanently shift the balance of power in my entire family. So I did exactly that. On Christmas Day, I drove to my parents' house, dressed to the nines. I walked in, gave my mother a hug, and shook my father's hand. I told them, Julia got caught up. She's on her way. I'll just open the door for her when she arrives. I sat down with my whole family. Cousins, uncles, aunts, and my grandparents, who were just as conservative as my father. The air was thick with the smell of roast turkey and polite, strained conversation. I waited. After about 20 minutes, the doorbell rang. I heard the chime and rushed to open it. I walked back into the living room where everyone was gathered, a beaming smile on my face. Standing next to me was Julian, looking impeccably stylish. Everyone, I announced, my voice ringing with false cheer. I'd like you to meet Julian, my boyfriend. I have never seen a room go so quiet, so fast. It was like a vacuum had sucked all the sound out of the air. People literally gasped. My sister, brother, and mother had this incredible look on their faces, a mix of sheer terror and pure amusement. Everyone else was just in shock. But my father, he was seething. He just completely lost it. Right in front of everyone. The color drained from his face, then rushed back as a furious, blotchy red. The veins in his neck bulged to the point where they looked like they were about to pop. He shot up from his chair, his fists clenched. Leave, he ordered, his voice low and dangerous. My grandparents urged him not to make a scene, but he was far beyond that. This exposed Arthur's greatest flaw, his belief that control was the same as respect. He ruled by fear. And when that fear was challenged, his entire world crumbled, revealing the fragile man beneath the tyrant's mask. I just stood there and looked at him. Calmly, I replied, how should I do that? Should I call the police and have them escort me out? You can explain the situation to them. I knew he never would. He knew some of the local officers personally. It wasn't a call he was willing to make or a situation he was willing to explain. I had called his bluff. And he just sank. It was like watching a balloon deflate. He shrank before my very eyes. My mother and grandmother rushed to his side to calm him down as he walked out of the room, utterly defeated. I just stood there, watching him go, not believing my own eyes. After years of being terrified of this man, I saw him for the caricature he really was. A feeling washed over me. I finally felt free. I didn't give a damn anymore. It felt amazing. It was then I realized the irony of it all. My father had spent years teaching me to stand up to bullies. And that's exactly what I had just done. Julian and I stayed for the whole evening. He played his part perfectly. He was charming and witty. And eventually, he managed to win over some of my aunts and even my grandmother. At one point, she pulled me aside and told me, completely unironically, how glad she was that I'd found such a delightful man. And that he reminded her of her favorite TV character, Mr. Humphreys from an old show called Are You Being Served? Calling him such a doll. My father eventually came back to the room and sat in a corner, sulking and refusing to meet my gaze. He drank way too much whiskey. And every time my mother tried to talk to him in a hushed voice, he would just make a go-away gesture with his hand. I stayed away from home for a while after that. I eventually explained to everyone that it had been a prank. A way to make a point and get back at my father for how he had treated me for so many years. To my relief, pretty much everyone sympathized. I didn't lose a single family member over what I did. But my father. He lost a lot of respect in people's eyes that night. He was always the one in control. The one directing the scene. But now he doesn't anymore. I do my own thing. My sister does her own thing. He can't order people around anymore. And I feel like a fool for ever letting him. He threatened to disinherit me that night. Among many other things. But in the end, something inside him just broke. I can now wear whatever I want. Enjoy whatever hobbies I want. And nothing happens. All of my relationships since have been with women. And I have since married and had children of my own. In an interesting turn of events, my younger brother came out as gay a few years later. By that time, my now aging father had mellowed somewhat. Since he already had grandchildren and his legacy was secured, he didn't seem to mind much. It also helps that my brother is a muscular gym rat. And they can bond over sports in a way my father and I never could. That single act of defiance at Christmas wasn't just for me. I had inadvertently blazed a trail for my brother, making it easier for him to be his true self. Still, whenever the subject of sexuality comes up, my father is incredibly awkward. I don't think that will ever change. But I feel my revenge was pretty successful in the end. Ultimately, my story shows that confronting a bully is the only way to take away their power. Even when that bully is your own father. True freedom isn't something you're given. It's something you have to take for yourself. What do you think is the right way to handle a controlling family member? Is there a line that should never be crossed? Even for the sake of standing up for yourself?